They say you never truly know someone until money is involved. I learned that lesson at 72 years old, standing in my own kitchen, holding a cup of chamomile tea that had gone cold in my trembling hands. My name is Catherine Wells, and this is the story of how I pretended to have dementia for 6 months after hearing my son say the words that shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Once she forgets everything, we'll sell the house. Let me take you back to where this all started. It was a Tuesday evening in March, one of those early spring nights where winter still has its claws in the air, but you can smell spring trying to break through. I'd spent the afternoon tending to my rose garden, the same garden my late husband Thomas and I had planted 35 years ago when we first bought this house. This house, this beautiful Victorian with its wraparound porch and original crown molding and windows that catch the morning sun just right. Thomas and I bought it when David was 3 years old. We'd saved for 7 years for the down payment. I remember the day we got the keys, how Thomas carried me over the threshold even though we'd been married for 4 years already. "New house, new beginning," he'd said, and kissed me right there in the empty living room that still smelled like paint and possibility. We'd raised David here. His height marks are still on the doorframe in the kitchen, little pencil lines tracking his growth from age 3 to 18. His fingerprints are probably still on the window in his old bedroom, where he used to press his nose against the glass watching for his father to come home from work. This house held every Christmas morning, every birthday party, every scraped knee and homework struggle and teenage argument and making up hug. And my rose garden, every rose bush has a memory. The yellow ones we planted when David was born because yellow roses mean joy and new beginnings. The red ones from our 25th anniversary when Thomas surprised me with a renewal of our vows in the backyard under a rented tent with all our friends watching. The white ones from my mother's funeral, transplanted from her garden to mine, so I'd always have a piece of her. The pink ones I added after Thomas passed 5 years ago because he always said pink roses meant gratitude, and I was grateful for every moment we'd shared, every laugh, every quiet morning, every hand held in the darkness. I was in the kitchen that evening, making myself some tea, chamomile with honey, the way I'd made it every night for 40 years. The house was quiet except for the old grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away the seconds. The same clock that had belonged to Thomas's grandfather, the one that chimed on the hour with a sound that had become the heartbeat of our home. I'd thought I was alone. David and his wife Jennifer had stopped by earlier for dinner, and I'd assumed they'd left around 7:30. But they hadn't. I was about to call out to them to ask if they wanted more coffee when I heard my son's voice drifting from the living room. Something in his tone made me freeze right there, one hand on the kettle, the other holding my favorite mug, the one David had made me in a pottery class when he was 12. The glaze was uneven and the handle sat at a slightly crooked angle, but I'd treasured it for 30 years because my boy had made it for me. It wasn't the warm voice he used with me. It was calculating, cold. It was a voice I'd never heard from my son before, and something primal in me recognized danger in that tone. "I'm telling you, Jen, it's just a matter of time," David said. "She's already starting to slip. Did you see her today? She asked me twice what time dinner was." The tea kettle was shaking in my hand. I set it down carefully, silently, and pressed myself against the wall where I couldn't be seen but could hear every word. My heart began to pound. I had asked twice. I'd been distracted, worried about whether I'd made enough food. Jennifer's voice came next. That syrupy, sweet tone she always used around me, stripped away to reveal something sharp underneath. "How long do you think we have to wait? Our house needs a new roof, David. We need that money." "The doctor said early signs of dementia can progress quickly at her age," David replied. I could hear him pacing, his footsteps on the hardwood floor Thomas and I had refinished by hand. "Once she forgets everything, we'll sell the house. The market's good right now. This property alone is worth at least $800,000. $800,000. That's what my life had become to them, a number, a transaction waiting to happen. "What about memory care facilities?" Jennifer asked. "Those are expensive." David laughed. Actually laughed. "There are state-run facilities. She'll be fine. She won't even know the difference once the dementia really kicks in. I stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made breakfast for David every morning before school, where I'd baked his birthday cakes, where I'd held him when his father died, and I felt something inside me crack wide open. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they couldn't have known because they were so busy planning my decline. I wasn't slipping. I wasn't forgetting. I was 72 years old with the mind of someone 20 years younger. I did the New York Times crossword every morning in pen. I managed my own finances, my own investments. I volunteered 3 days a week at the library, teaching computer skills to seniors. The only thing wrong with me was that I'd trusted my son to be the man I'd raised him to be. I'd been wrong. That night, after they finally left, I sat in Thomas's old chair and I cried. Not just for the betrayal, but for the loss of who I thought my son was, for the death of the dream that I'd raised a good man. But somewhere between the tears and the anger and the grief, something else emerged. A plan. If David wanted me to have dementia, then that's exactly what he was going to get. I spent 3 days researching. I went to the library where I volunteered and used the computers there, clearing my browsing history each time. I read medical journals about early-stage dementia and Alzheimer's. I watched videos of people in various stages of cognitive decline. I studied the symptoms: forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty with familiar tasks, problems with words and communication, misplacing things, poor judgment, changes in mood. I could do this. I'd been an actress in community theater for 20 years. I'd played Blanche Dubois, Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, even Lady Macbeth once. This would be my greatest role. But it had to be subtle. Too dramatic and they'd know something was wrong. Too subtle and they wouldn't take the bait. I needed them to believe it was real. I needed them to think they were winning. The first symptom appeared 4 days after I'd overheard their conversation. David called to check on me, something he'd started doing more frequently, though I now understood why. Instead of my usual sharp responses, I let my voice trail off mid-sentence. I was just... What was I saying? Oh, never mind. How are you, sweetheart? You were asking about the grandkids, David said, and I could hear the edge of excitement in his voice. Mom, are you okay? Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? Although, did I take my morning pills? I can't remember if I let the sentence hang. Mom, maybe I should come over more often, just to check on things. That would be lovely, I said, injecting just the right amount of vagueness into my tone. He started visiting 3 times a week. Each visit, I gave him a little more. I'd wear the same sweater 2 days in a row and act confused when he pointed it out. Did I? Are you sure? I thought I wore the blue one yesterday. I'd misplace my reading glasses and find them in the refrigerator, right next to the milk. How did these get here? That's so strange. I'd start stories about Thomas and forget the endings, trailing off mid-sentence to stare out the window. I'd call him by his father's name. Just once. Just enough to see his eyes light up with something that made my stomach turn. Hope. He was hopeful that his mother was losing her mind. Week 3, I forgot my dear friend Margaret's name, even though we'd been friends for 40 years. David was visiting when she called, and I held the phone away from my ear, confused. Who is this? I'm sorry, I don't... Margaret? Do I know a Margaret? I could hear Margaret's shocked voice through the phone, and I hated lying to her, hated the worry I was causing. But I'd already decided I would tell her the truth after this was over. She'd understand. Margaret was the one who'd held me at Thomas's funeral. She'd understand. Week 5, I wore 2. Different shoes to the grocery store. 1 black flat, 1 brown. I shuffled through the aisles, moving slowly, pretending to forget what I'd come for. I put strange combinations in my cart. Cat food when I didn't have a cat. Baby formula when the youngest person in my life was a 20-year-old college student. The cashier looked at me with such pity. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone? David, who'd insisted on coming with me after the shoe incident, rushed over. It's okay, she's with me. Mom, let's put these things back. I let him guide me, let him treat me like a child, and I wanted to scream. Week 7, I attended my book club but pretended to forget which book we were discussing. These were women I'd known for 15 years. We'd read everything from Tolstoy to Toni Morrison together. We'd cried over characters, argued about themes, laughed at inside jokes that had developed over hundreds of books. And I sat there, pretending I didn't remember what we were reading, pretending I didn't know their names. Judith, sweet Judith with her wild gray curls, pulled me aside after. "Catherine, honey, are you feeling all right? You seem different lately." I wanted to tell her, wanted to pull her close and whisper the truth, but I couldn't risk it. Not yet. "I'm just tired," I said. "Getting old, I suppose." The hardest part wasn't the acting. It was watching my son watch me with barely concealed anticipation. It was seeing Jennifer's calculating glances around my house as if she were already measuring the rooms for an estate sale. It was knowing that the people I'd loved and trusted were waiting for me to disappear so they could cash in. But I kept going, because I needed them to believe it completely. I needed them to relax into their certainty that I was fading away. 1 month in, I forgot about a doctor's appointment. David insisted on taking me to the next one. I'd already spoken with Dr. Patterson privately, told her what I was doing and why. She was horrified by what I'd overheard, and she agreed to help me. During the appointment with David in the room, she expressed concern about my cognitive function and recommended some tests. "It could be early-stage dementia," she said, playing her part perfectly. "We'll need to monitor this closely." I watched David's face. He tried to look concerned, but I knew him too well. I'd raised him. I'd seen every expression he'd ever made, and what I saw in that moment was satisfaction. 2 months in, Jennifer started appearing with paint swatches and interior design magazines. "Just thinking about updating your living room, Mom," she'd say. "Wouldn't these colors be nice?" She was already redecorating in her mind, already spending the money from my house. 3 months in, I really committed to the role. I started a small fire on the stove by forgetting I was cooking. I'd done it carefully, controlled, nothing that could actually cause damage. But David arrived to find smoke filling the kitchen and me standing there looking confused. I was making soup, wasn't I?" I said. That night, I heard him and Jennifer in hushed conversation by the front door. "We need to start looking at facilities," Jennifer said. "What if she burns the house down?" "Soon," David promised. "Very soon." 4 months in, I got lost driving home from the grocery store. I sat in a parking lot 3 blocks from my house and called David, my voice shaking with manufactured fear. "I don't know where I am. Nothing looks familiar." He came and got me, and I saw the glance he exchanged with Jennifer, the look that said, "This is it. It's happening." 5 months in, they hired a lawyer. I wasn't supposed to know about this, but I'd stayed sharp, stayed alert. I'd seen the papers David tried to hide when I walked into the room. I'd heard Jennifer on the phone talking about power of attorney and conservatorship. They were building their case, getting their ducks in a row, and I was going to let them think they'd won right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under them. Month 6 arrived with autumn colors painting my maple trees gold and orange. It was October, and Thanksgiving was approaching, the perfect time for my final act. I called David on a Tuesday afternoon. I let my voice sound fragile, uncertain. "David? Is that you?" "Yes, Mom, it's me." I was thinking, it's been so long since we had the whole family together for Thanksgiving. Could we? I trailed off as if forgetting what I wanted to say. "You want to have Thanksgiving here? At your house?" He couldn't keep the eagerness from his voice. "Yes, I think I'd like that. One more time. Just family." I paused. "Who am I talking to again?" "It's David, Mom. Your son." "Oh, yes, David, my sweet boy." The hook was set. "That sounds wonderful, Mom," he said. "I'll arrange everything. Don't you worry about a thing." Over the next few weeks, David and Jennifer took over planning my Thanksgiving dinner. They invited David's sister, Linda, who lived 2 states away and whom I hadn't seen in over a year. They invited Jennifer's parents. They invited David's children from his first marriage. My precious grandchildren, Marcus and Sophie, both in college now. They even invited Jennifer's brother and his wife. 12 people total. Perfect. I played my part beautifully. I got confused about the date. I forgot we were having company. I asked repeatedly what was happening. And through it all, I watched David and Jennifer exchange those knowing looks that said, any day now, and all of this will be ours. What they didn't know was that I'd been making my own preparations. I'd contacted Linda privately, using my friend Helen's phone so it wouldn't show up on my records. I'd told her everything, every word I'd overheard, every moment of the past 6 months. Linda had been shocked, then furious, then absolutely ready to help me execute my plan. I'd also contacted Marcus and Sophie. My grandchildren deserved to know what their father was planning. The conversation had broken their hearts, but they agreed to come to Thanksgiving and say nothing. I'd gathered evidence. I'd installed a small recording device in my living room and captured dozens of conversations between David and Jennifer, discussing their plans for my house, my money, my life. I'd photographed the documents they'd left lying around. I'd kept a detailed journal of every fake symptom I'd performed and their reactions to each one. And I'd changed my will. Everything would go to Linda, Marcus, and Sophie, with specific bequests to the charities Thomas and I had always supported. David would get nothing but the truth. But I wasn't done yet. I needed them to show everyone exactly who they were. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright, the kind of November morning where your breath fogs in the air and frost clings to the grass in sparkling patterns. I'd been up since 5 in the morning, not out of confusion, but out of preparation and purpose. This was it. This was the day I'd been working toward for 6 months, the day I'd reclaim my life and expose the truth. I'd cooked everything myself, just like I used to, just like Thomas had loved. A 20-pound turkey that I'd brined for 2 days with herb butter carefully massaged under the skin, the way my mother had taught me 60 years ago. Homemade stuffing with sage from my garden and cranberries I'd picked myself last month, and frozen. Sweet potato casserole with the pecan topping my mother had taught me to make when I was 10 years old, standing on a stool to reach the counter. Green bean casserole made from scratch, not with canned soup, but with real mushrooms and cream. Fresh cranberry sauce that I'd simmered with orange zest and cinnamon. Dinner rolls from my grandmother's recipe, the one that required 3 rises and patience and love, and 3 pies. Pumpkin with fresh puree from the pumpkins in my garden, apple with Honeycrisp apples from the farmer's market, and pecan with the pecans from Helen's tree that she'd shelled and given me last week. The kitchen smelled like my childhood, like every Thanksgiving I'd ever known, like love and tradition and family, real family, not the kind that counted your worth in dollars. But I hid all the evidence of my competence. The turkey went back in the oven covered with foil. The sides went into Tupperware containers in the refrigerator, hidden behind milk and juice where no one would think to look. The pies I'd left at Helen's house to bring over later, each one labeled with a note in my clear, steady handwriting. When David and Jennifer arrived at 9 in the morning to help poor confused Mom, they found me in my bathrobe, hair uncombed, looking confused and lost in my own kitchen. "What day is it?" I asked vaguely. "It's Thanksgiving, Mom," David said, with exaggerated patience. "Remember? We're having everyone over." "Are we? That's nice." I shuffled toward the kitchen. "I should start cooking." "Don't worry about it," Jennifer said quickly. "We'll order catering. You just rest." "But I always cook," I said, letting my voice crack. "Thomas loved my turkey." "Dad's been gone for 5 years, Mom," David said gently, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. This was it. The moment he'd been waiting for. Total confusion. Total decline. "Has it been that long?" I let tears fill my eyes. "I miss him. I know, Mom, I know." David hugged me, and I felt nothing but contempt for the man who was embracing me while planning to abandon me. The guests started arriving at 2. Linda came first, giving me a knowing look as she hugged me. "Hello, Catherine," she said pointedly, using my name where David and Jennifer used Mom as if I might not remember who I was. Marcus and Sophie arrived with Sophie's new boyfriend, my brilliant grandchildren, both so much like Thomas with their sharp minds and kind hearts. They hugged me tight, and Sophie whispered, "We love you, Grandma." So much. Jennifer's family came next, all of them strangers to me despite having met them at the wedding. They looked around my house with appraising eyes, and I heard Jennifer's mother whisper, "Beautiful bones, great location." They were already planning the sale, already dividing up the spoils. We gathered in the dining room at 3. David had ordered an expensive catered meal, which sat on my table, looking professionally arranged and completely impersonal. Nothing like the Thanksgivings Thomas and I used to host, when the food was made with love and the table groaned under the weight of dishes passed down through generations. David stood to say grace, something he never did. "Dear Lord," he began, "we're grateful for this time together as a family. We're grateful for Mom and all the years she's given us. We're grateful for this house and the memories we've made here." The house? Of course. Even his prayers were about the house. "And we're grateful," he continued, "that we can all be here to support each other through difficult times. Amen." "Amen," everyone echoed. We began eating, and the conversations flowed around me while I sat at the head of my table, acting confused and disoriented. I asked Marcus what grade he was in. He was a junior in college. I asked Jennifer's father what he did for a living, though he'd told me 4 times before. I called Sophie by the wrong name. I stared at my plate as if I'd forgotten what to do with a fork, and I watched. I watched David and Jennifer exchange glances. I watched Jennifer's mother lean over to whisper to her husband. I watched everyone's pitying looks, their sad smiles. Then, right on cue at 4 o'clock, Helen knocked on the door with my pies. "I'll get it," Linda said, jumping up. She came back carrying 3 perfect pies, and the room fell silent. "Catherine asked me to hold these for her," Helen said loudly. "Bless her. She baked them at 5 this morning." Jennifer's fork clattered onto her plate. "What?" "Oh, and here," Helen continued, pulling out her phone. "Catherine, should I play it now?" "Yes," I said, and my voice was no longer vague or confused. It was clear, strong, sharp as broken glass. "Play it now." What happened next was beautiful chaos. Helen connected her phone to my Bluetooth speaker. Thomas had set it up for me years ago, and I'd never told David I knew how to use it. And suddenly David's voice filled my dining room, crystal clear, damning as hell. "Once she forgets everything, we'll sell the house." The color drained from his face, not slowly but all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. His fork, halfway to his mouth, froze in midair. Jennifer's hand flew to her throat. The recording continued. 6 months of conversations that I'd captured with a device smaller than my thumb, hidden in the decorative bowl on my living room table. David and Jennifer discussing my decline as if rating a movie. Their plans for my money spoken with the casual tone of people deciding what to have for dinner. Their calculations about memory care facilities delivered with the same enthusiasm some people reserve for vacation planning. Jennifer talking about the new roof they needed, the kitchen renovation they wanted, the vacation to Europe they'd been putting off. David laughing, actually laughing, about state-run facilities. "She won't even know the difference once the dementia really kicks in," his voice said from the speaker. All of it. Every damning word captured and preserved, and now playing for everyone to hear. Marcus dropped his fork. It clattered against his plate, the sound sharp in the stunned silence. Sophie's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Linda's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Jennifer's parents looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. Jennifer's mother had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "What is this?" David stood up so fast his chair tipped backward, hitting the wall with a crack. His face had gone from white to red, fury and panic warring in his expression. "This is illegal. You can't record people without consent. This won't hold up in any court." I stood slowly, carefully, and I felt like I was shedding a skin. The confused old woman fell away, and Catherine Wells, sharp, strong, furious, took her place. Actually, I said, and my voice was no longer vague or confused. It was clear as a bell, strong as steel, sharp as the knife I'd used to cut that turkey I'd made myself. In this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. I consented, and this is my house, where I have every right to record what's said in my own living room. I checked with my attorney, thoroughly, multiple times. Every recording is legal and admissible. Mom, he started. Don't call me that, I cut him off. A mother is someone you love, someone you protect, someone you care for, not someone you wait to deteriorate so you can cash in. Jennifer tried to speak. Catherine, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. I understand that for 6 months I've watched my son and his wife pray for my mind to fail. I've watched you measure my rooms. I've seen you pricing out my furniture. I've heard you plan my future in a facility you'd never visit because I wouldn't even know the difference. I looked around the table at all the shocked faces. I want you all to know that I don't have dementia. I don't have Alzheimer's. I don't have anything wrong with my mind except the incredible stupidity of thinking my son loved me more than he loved money. The doctor said, David tried. The doctor said what I asked her to say. She's known me for 20 years. She knew exactly what I was doing and why. Marcus stood up, his jaw clenched. Dad, how could you? Marcus, you don't understand the financial pressure, David began. Financial pressure? Marcus's voice cracked. You make $200,000 a year. Jennifer makes another $150,000. You want money for a roof so badly you'd throw your own mother away? Sophie was crying. Grandma, I'm so sorry we didn't. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart, I said gently. You didn't know, but now you do. Now everyone does. Linda stood up next, and she was furious. David, I'm ashamed to call you my brother. Do you know what Mom did after Dad died? She gave you money for your business when you were starting out. She paid for Marcus and Sophie's preschool when you were struggling. She helped you with the down payment on your house, and this is how you repay her? That was her choice, David shouted. She wanted to help. And you wanted to institutionalize her and sell her house, Linda shot back. You wanted to erase her so you could have her money. Jennifer's parents got up to leave, clearly mortified. Jennifer's mother grabbed her purse. We're going, Jennifer, we'll talk later. Jennifer started crying. I didn't mean, we were just planning for the future. For your future, I said. Not mine, never mine. David looked around the room desperately. She's manipulative, don't you see? She's been lying to us for months. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who needs to know the truth, I said quietly. The kind of person whose heart was broken by her own son. The kind of person who needed to be absolutely certain before she believed the worst. I pulled out an envelope from my pocket. This is a copy of my new will. Linda and my attorney have the original. Marcus and Sophie are my primary beneficiaries. Linda gets the house. There are bequests to the charities your father and I always supported. David, you get nothing. Not one penny. Not one photograph. Nothing. You can't do this. David was panicking now. I'm your son. No, I said, and I was surprised by how calm I felt. You were my son. Now you're just someone who showed me exactly who you really are. I looked at my grandchildren, my sister, my real family. I'm sorry your Thanksgiving was ruined, but I have a real dinner in the kitchen, a real turkey I made myself, real stuffing, real everything. If you'd like to stay and have a real family meal, you're welcome. Marcus and Sophie nodded immediately. Linda put her arm around me. Helen stayed, of course. David and Jennifer stood there stunned. Finally, David grabbed his coat. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. Your lawyer can call my lawyer. But David, don't ever come back to this house. Don't call. Don't write. You wanted me to forget you existed. Consider your wish granted. They left. Jennifer's family had already gone, and the 6 of us who remained sat back down at the table. I went to the kitchen and brought out the real meal. The turkey, golden and perfect. The homemade sides. the love and effort and tradition. We said a real grace, thanking God for truth and family and the strength to face both. And we ate. We talked. Sophie told us about college. Marcus shared his plans for medical school. Linda and I caught up on the year we'd missed. Helen made us laugh with her stories. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in 5 years, since Thomas died. That was 3 weeks ago. David has tried to call 17 times. I haven't answered. I watch his name flash on my phone screen and I feel nothing. Where there used to be love, there's just a void, an empty space where my son used to be. His lawyer sent a letter threatening to contest the will. My lawyer, a fierce woman named Patricia who reminded me of Linda, sent back documentation of everything, the recordings, the journal I'd kept in my own handwriting, statements from Dr. Patterson who was appalled by what David had tried to do, statements from Linda and Helen and my grandchildren who'd witnessed everything. The letter Patricia sent was 23 pages long. It detailed everything, every fake symptom I'd performed, every cold calculation David had made, every legal precedent for why a parent can disinherit a child for financial elder abuse. The word abuse was used 17 times in that letter. Patricia told me David's lawyer called the next day and said they wouldn't be contesting anything. Yesterday I got a long letter from David, not from his lawyer, but from him, handwritten on the nice stationery I'd given him 3 Christmases ago. He said he was sorry. He said he'd made a mistake. He said Jennifer pushed him into it, that it was her idea, that he'd just gone along with it. He said he'd been stressed about money. He said he loved me. He said he'd always loved me. He said, couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive him? I read it twice. Then I walked to my fireplace, the one Thomas and I used to sit in, front of on winter evenings, and I burned it. I watched David's words curl and blacken and turn to ash. It felt like a funeral. The death of the last bit of hope I had that my son might actually understand what he'd done. Some people think I should forgive him. My neighbor Susan, who doesn't know the whole story, said family is family. My cousin Robert, who I told everything, said everyone deserves a second chance. Even Helen, my dear, loyal Helen, gently suggested that maybe in a year or 2 I might want to reach out, might want to try to rebuild something. But here's what I know, what I learned in those 6 months of pretending to lose my mind while watching my son celebrate my decline. He didn't make one mistake. He made hundreds of them. Every day for 6 months, he looked at his mother and hoped she was losing her mind. Every visit was a calculation. Every conversation was a chess move. Every concerned look was a performance. You don't forgive that. You don't forget that. You just move on. I'm selling the house myself. Linda doesn't want it, and staying here feels wrong now. Too many ghosts. Too many memories tainted by knowing what David was thinking when he walked these halls. I found a beautiful condo downtown near the library where I volunteer. Marcus and Sophie helped me pick it out. I'm taking my roses with me. I hired a landscaper to carefully dig them up and transplant them. The yellow ones from David's birth, the red ones from my anniversary, the pink ones from Thomas's memory. They'll bloom somewhere new, somewhere better. As for the money from the house sale, I'm splitting it between Marcus and Sophie's college funds, Linda's retirement, and a foundation I'm starting in Thomas's name to help seniors who are being financially abused by their families. Because I've learned that I'm not alone, that this happens more than anyone wants to admit, that there are people out there who need someone to fight for them the way I fought for myself.